ASMR Who, and this is my kind of reaction review of Lucky Day. Now, similar to the Robot Revolution, I was not able to. I watched this story in the morning. I've not been able to talk about it until I've done a full day. I basically watched it Saturday morning when it dropped, more or less, a little bit after it dropped. Then did a full day of work. It's currently the early hours of Sunday morning as I'm recording this. I've got a full day of work on Sunday as well, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this video out for Sunday. So you might get this on Monday. But I've had a bit of time to think about this episode since I've watched it. It's my kind of what I'm trying to say. So this is not my kind of initial first reaction to the episode. Now, when I watched it this morning, I'll be very honest. For the first 20 minutes, first half of it, I wasn't enjoying it. It felt like Love and Monsters. If Love and Monsters was bad, now I know that's not a popular opinion. I know most people think that Love and Monsters is bad, but I disagree. I think it's a very good story. That's twice this season I've ended up talking about Love and Monsters. I'm sure I mentioned it in my review of The Well as well. Not The Well, of Lux with the fan scene. But the kind of story of Conrad and meeting the Doctor and all this, I was like, oh, this feels very Love and Monsters. I found the kind of love story between him and Ruby a little difficult to sit through some of those scenes, and it's I would like to clarify and stress that it is not any comment of the acting ability of Millie Gibson or Jonah King, I believe his name is, who plays Conrad. They're both very good actors. But, you know, the kind of lovey-dovey, all that stuff, didn't particularly interest me. I didn't love that. But of course, this episode has a big twist. And it kind of totally recontextualizes it. And I'll be honest, initially, when the episode finished, I was like, well, you know, we were kind of due a bit of a dud this series, because we've had 3 really good episodes. We were probably due one that wasn't great. But actually, having thought about it, and to be honest with you, I started kind of reconsidering my opinion of it almost immediately. I think this episode has a lot to say. Now, I haven't watched the Unleashed, but I have watched the YouTube behind the scenes. It was great to see so much from Pete McTighe, who wrote it, in the behind the scenes. I think it was a shame that there was nothing from Sharma Angel Warfall in the behind the scenes or the Unleashed for The Well. And I realised I got her name wrong last time. I think I got her to the double barrel surname the wrong way around. So I apologise for that. But yeah, this episode actually really has a lot to say. I think I miss the Doctor and Belinda. I miss their dynamic. I think this episode suffers from it. I just think that, you know, I think Ruby Sunday is a fine character, but Belinda is just far more engaging to me. She's a much stronger character. I think that very much seems to be the fan consensus as well, to be honest. But but it was nice to check back in with Ruby. And I really do appreciate what this episode was trying to say, you know. And I think what I really appreciate is the fact that they commit to this guy just being the absolute worst guy going. And he's clearly, I think, the kind of most infuriating thing about Conrad as a character and as a villain is that he feels very genuine. You know, I think it's the kind of hypocrisy of being like, oh, the unit is based on lies, and look, it's just people dressed up in costumes, while he's got his two mates dressed up in costumes, and he's made like this kind of projection and lying based on absolutely, nothing, and clearly, obviously lying, but maintaining that it's actually these other people who are lying, and even to the point where, I thought there was a moment where I was like, oh, is he gonna get, sort of got by the monster and then go, oh, I admit it, I was wrong and all this, and yeah, I lied. But even after he's kind of crumbled and shown his true colours and gone, oh my god, please make it stop, the fact that then, as soon as he's immediately safe again, he goes, oh well, your special effects and all that, like he doubles down on the lie immediately. It's so infuriating, but feels so real. And I think that's very, very interesting. I think this is the most interesting Kate Stewart has been for quite a while. Possibly her entire time in the show. I think really challenging her is great, and I look forward to seeing more of that from her. I imagine Unit's going to be in the finale. We know we're getting the Unit spin-off, which is co-written by Russell and Pete McTighe, who wrote this story. So if we're getting more of that kind of side of Kate, I'm all for it. I don't love this weird kind of Kate and Colonel Ibrahim relationship that's going on here. It just seems a bit like, I don't understand why they're doing that, but sure, I think one thing that doesn't entirely make sense about this story is the idea of the Lucky Day podcast, which the episode is named after. Kind of, is that obviously Ruby goes on this podcast and that's how she meets Conrad. But what I don't understand is that either this podcast is a front for Conrad, where he's pro kind of Doctor and pro Unit, and that's how he gets Ruby on the podcast. But it's all a front for what he's actually like and what he actually believes. In which case, how does he have so many followers? How's that, Or the podcast is where he spews all his nonsense rubbish. In which case, how has he managed to get Ruby on? Did she not bother checking at all? About, obviously she sees his, social media post, the photo of her, but like, she didn't bother to check what his podcast was actually about, because surely it's not pro. It's that I'm not sure that entirely makes a lot of sense. But also, is it a deal breaker? Not really, because I think this story has a lot on its mind, and I think that's very interesting. And I kind of don't have anything specifically to say on that. I think it's kind of clear what it's saying, and I think it's very interesting that this guy's a pretty effective villain, and he's just some bloke. A friend of mine was a bit like, oh, Mrs. Flood, why is she recruiting this random bloke? This guy, there's been actual gods and all this. What is this, why is this guy involved? But, Conrad as a villain, narratively, is 100 times more effective than Sutekh was. And I just think that's funny, to be honest. I think has such a wonderful Doctor costume right at the start for like a minute. I don't really understand why we've got a Doctor Light story here. This wasn't a scheduling thing, as far as I'm aware. Obviously, we know that the reason we got 73 yards and Dot and Bubble last series was because of Ncuti's schedule and his filming commitments to sex education. I didn't think that was still going to be the case with this season, but we have a Doctor Light story. You know, it's good. I think I do need to rewatch it because it's probably the one that kind of I immediately was like, man, I don't know, but I'd probably put it on par with the Robot Revolution. To be honest, I think you kind of get more out of it the more you think about it. But yeah, I love Ncuti's costume right at the start of this. But I also like the fact that we got to see him in his like John Ruby Road costume again in the kind of flashback sequence, because it kind of makes that his definitive costume. So that was nice. And I liked. I just much prefer Ncuti's Doctor with Belinda. He's just way better than with Ruby. Quite frankly, I thought he was wonderful in that opening scene. I thought he was decent in the scene with Ruby, and I really liked the fact that even the Doctor at the end cannot make this guy change his mind. This guy is too far down the rabbit hole. He's too deep. He will not accept that he's wrong. And again, that was something that I thought about. I was thinking about more and more afterwards. This idea of this guy being just a liar, and initially you think, oh, he doesn't love his mum. He was not loved by his mum, and all this, and so he's kind of. There's an idea early on that his mum is gone or dead or whatever, and he, and then you find out that no, his mum's alive and he's got properties and she lives in France and he pays for it. But it's this idea that he's a kind of a pathological liar, and it's almost this thing of at the start you think his mum's being like, I'll stop lying because she doesn't believe him. She's trying to get drunk on New Year's, which is possibly also true. But then actually, there's a kind of a truth to that, and this guy does tell lies. And this guy is actually just a spoiled kid. This rich white kid who just decides that what he says is right, and he is kind of owed the truth. And this idea of going into unit with a gun with absolutely no plan and just being like, go on, tell the truth, and not accepting the truth is the truth because he just doesn't choose to believe it. And even the Doctor he can't intimidate this guy. He can't make this guy see the wonder of the universe. A lovely dark moment from Ncuti where he's like, you're gonna die alone in prison and no one's gonna care about you. Just a really great moment, and the clicking, and then he's at like, what a cool moment for this Doctor. I'm not sure about the fact that this seems to be the case that Conrad told the Doctor about Belinda, and that's how the Doctor knew to find her in the Robot Revolution, because when he just like heard this random guy mention her and then just immediately went looking for her. Maybe there's a bit more to that we've yet to hear. I don't know. But yeah, this was good, actually. And yeah, I think the fact that it for kind of obvious reasons, reminded me of season 1. Reminded me of last season, which I didn't love, especially kind of in retrospect, in hindsight, I didn't love that series, but so the way it reminded me of that, I didn't massively get along with. But actually, I think, you know, it will hold up on rewatching, and just the fact it's got so much to say is really interesting and really lovely, because it felt like there wasn't, with a lot of these stories, there wasn't loads. A lot of the stories from season 1 didn't feel like there was much they had to say, Space Babies isn't really saying all that much. 73 Hours is kind of intentionally vague. I don't know what the finale is about, if anything. Obviously, Dot and Bubble's got a point to make, but this series just feels, it's just much more satisfying for me as a viewer, as a fan. So I think, this episode kind of won me round after the fact. I kind of came away from it being like, well, that was probably the bad one. And if that was the bad one, we're in for a good series. But this was really strong. So yeah, I think that's kind of, there was something else. Oh, that was it. I think the dynamic with Ruby's family, it kind of continues to be shallow and a bit weak. Their two mums and her grandma. There's this idea that they she clearly needs this guy. She needs a relationship and all this. But then we get the twist and all this, and then we don't see them again. We don't get any kind of resolution with them, but we do get Kate being like, "Oh, come and talk to me," or whatever. And even Shirley makes a joke about, like, "Are you collecting mums?" But we don't see any kind of resolution on that point from Ruby's actual mums. We don't really get a sense of what the relationship is, what the dynamic there is. We get a brief kind of tease that Ruby has made some sort of contact with her dad, but nothing really beyond that. So yeah, we'll see. I'm expecting Ruby to show back up again in the finale. We know that, like, Unit's going to be back. We know Mel's back in the finale, so yeah, we'll see. But I thought that this was strong, and I like both of Pete McTighe's previous television stories, Kablam and Praxeus. I think there's a lot good in both of those, but this is good as well. So yeah, I know that there's people kind of suggest that could Pete McTighe be the next showrunner after Russell leaves, and while he's not necessarily my first pick, ideally I would want someone kind of totally new. I always used to say Toby Whithouse, and I still think he'd be wonderful, but I think maybe the time has passed for that. But I think Pete McTighe would probably be a good choice. I think he's kind of written enough stories now to kind of prove his worth. So those are kind of my thoughts on this episode are a little bit more scattershot, because I kind of had an opinion on the episode and then almost totally changed it throughout the day just thinking about it. So those are my thoughts as it stands currently. So yeah, hopefully this will go out on Sunday. It might end up going out on Monday, but let me know what you thought about Lucky Day. Did you enjoy it? And yeah, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't. Thank you very much for watching, thank you for your time, and I will see you all next week for the story and the engine. Bye bye.